Welcome to the Sandersonian Institute of Cosmere Studies, where there's always another secret.
Welcome back, Sixers, to another episode of the Sandersonian Institute of Cosmere Studies. This is episode 137. Today is June 5th, 2023. I'm Bill, and I'm joined, as always, by my passionate co-hosts, Amy and Jordan. Welcome.
Hello.
Before we get started, we do want to remind you that the Sandersonian Institute of Cosmere Studies is not a spoiler-free podcast. That means that if there is something in the Cosmere you haven't read and you're worried about hearing spoilers, you might want to go read those first, then come back and join the discussion. And there are big spoilers for Book 4 of the Stormlight Archive tonight. So spoilers are coming in 3, 2, 1... Now, we are talking about Odium's fate and what that means going forward. In other words, we are talking about Taravangian. For those of you who listen to the podcast recordings or watch the videos on YouTube after the fact, we do want to remind you that it's possible for our listeners to interact with us live via chat as we record each episode at www.twitch.tv/InKeepersTable. We record episodes every other Monday night, starting at 7:30 p.m. Pacific Time, 10:30 p.m. Eastern, so please join us and take an active part in the discussion. The show is made possible by the support of our listeners and patrons. It will, of course, continue to be free, but if you want to help us out, head over to patreon.com/Cosmere Studies. Even $1 or $2 per episode is really great, and we really, really appreciate it as we continue to work to improve the show. Patrons get immediate access to our Discord channel where you can talk about the show and the Cosmere with other listeners. We've got a great community over there. We've got some cool discussions, and you'll also get early access to bonus episodes, exclusive access to other bonus content, and other great stuff. But before we dive into the actual discussion, guess what time it is, guys?
8:37.
Exactly, and that means it's time for the Cosmere Thing of the Week. So this episode's Cosmere Thing of the Week is, I feel, topical and timely because everyone right now is playing Tears of the Kingdom, the newest Zelda game. So Jordan, can you pull up the Thing of the Week? It's already up. There we go. So this is from at Gar_Levia on Instagram and Reddit. And this is a crossover of Kaladin and Syl as Link and Navi. So I believe they called it Kaladink and Sylvie or Sylphie?
Sylvie.
So
Sylvie,
I kind of love this.
It's cute.
Especially just how
such a grumpy Kaladink.
How grumpy Kaladink is. He does not want to be cosplaying right now. But it's kind of perfect, right?
Mm-hmm.
I have always kind of imagined her in sort of Navi form.
Mm-hmm. I have. She's always
not Navi.
Yeah,
but
they're both
things.
Blue, but
yeah,
one
they're
glows.
all blue.
Different sizes.
But just I love this art style. It's like the way the light is working on his shirt and stuff. The lighting in here is really very well done. So yeah, excellent job.
Pretty.
All right, so next let's move on to Sanderson news. As of last week, Brandon has Stormlight 5 at 50% or 225,000 words. That's a lot of words. And that's halfway. He hopes. Because, his end goal right now is based on 450,000 words. He's feeling good about hitting it. He has hinted that it could cross over, but it seems like he's pretty confident in hitting right around 450,000. He has promised his editors that he will have a first draft to them on December 15th, which is right before the State of the Sanderson. And he has given the caveat a few times though that he could finish the book and it won't be quote good enough, as in up to his standards. So they might need to push the book back, which would affect its Dragonsteel 2024 release. That said, he has again expressed very much that he's confident that it'll be good enough and he'll be able to hit that deadline. So hopefully next year around Dragonsteel time, we'll have a mega Stormlight themed event.
Yes.
I mean, because we've seen how big it's gotten
Yeah.
just for Mistborn.
Mm-hmm.
I can't imagine how it's
Yeah.
going to be for
It's going to be
Stormlight.
huge. It possibly is going to be bigger this year than it was last year, and that's for Defiant,
The last-
which is one of his
Mhm.
smaller series. You know, but
Yeah.
Stormlight is like it's
Big.
the one that people come together for.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like if it, when
Recreate
when book 4 came out, our viewership skyrocketed for it, just briefly, because people wanted to talk about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and because of what we're going to be talking about today is a big reason.
Oh yes, they want to
Mhm.
know what is going on. Speaking of Skyward Legacy is at now 25%. And also speaking of Dragonsteel, the registration is open tomorrow or yesterday if you're listening to this on the day that it releases. So make sure you go and sign up for that. It's going to probably fill up pretty quickly, so you want to get in ASAP.
Especially if you want to see us, because we're coming back, baby.
We have been confirmed to be coming back for 2023, so we're excited to be there and see those of you who can actually make it, because y'all are awesome. It was so cool this last year. Like
Yeah.
the first year was fun, but it was so much smaller. Last year we got to meet a lot of viewers and listeners. It was just so cool.
Mhm.
So if y'all make it, we would love to meet you. Make sure to come by the booth. The Frugal Wizard Book Club, which unfortunately we were not invited to,
No.
they just finished recording and it is currently being edited. Those are going to be posted at the end of June on Brandon's YouTube channel, Brand Sanderson, youtube.com/Brand Sanderson. So those should be very interesting to get, again, more perspectives on the book. We did our own discussion a few weeks ago. So if you missed that, make sure to go back and check it out. And speaking of the Frugal Wizard, that is still being shipped out. A lot of people have been getting their copies lately. They've gotten a few truckloads in, and they're shipping them out as fast as they can. They are getting regular truckloads rather than the stop-go effect
trickle,
that happened with Tress. So the other thing is,
Have either of you gotten it yet?
I haven't gotten
I
mine
have
yet.
mine.
Amy has hers?
I have mine. Yes.
Amy's better than we are, Jordan.
Scoreboard.
I wonder if it's because I didn't do all of the other monthly ones that they're
They
prioritizing
have
that.
occasionally prioritized that. I think they're kind of bouncing back and forth, figuring out the best way to handle it.
So yeah, like I ended up putting up, if you go to our TikTok, you can see me unboxing it. And I was really surprised because a bunch of people who were like, yours is one of the first ones that I've seen unboxed.
Yeah.
I didn't put it up on YouTube. I probably should do that. Anyway, but yeah, I apparently got it pretty early on.
That's awesome.
So it's very pretty.
Yeah, it's because Amy's a better person than we are. And the universe rewards her.
They said it, not me.
Oh no! Apparently, people in our chat are better than us too. Jordan, you and I need to work on some things, I think.
I mean, look, we were scrambling earlier today to get the stream going. We are haphazard people at best.
Our behavior is erratic at best. All right. Well, should we move on into the main discussion?
Sure.
Oh, if you wanna.
Okay. So first thing I want to mention, I have a suspicion most of this discussion is going to be speculation, just because, yes, there's a lot of stuff about Taravangian, and we might talk a little bit about background because that will inform our speculation. But basically, Brandon dropped that bomb on us and walked away. So
it was such a cool moment. Like, just the dread of it.
Exactly.
The awesome dread.
Well, because
where suddenly you see all the pieces come together.
Where you see him take, well, because everybody's been waiting for what happens if Nightblood meets a shard. And so we see that happen, and then suddenly Taravangian wakes up as Odium, and it's just that, oh no.
Oh no.
Well, and it's something that Brandon cleverly hinted at that was something we should be worried about earlier in the book with Sazed's letter to Hoyd, because he says something to the effect of, because they're going back and forth, and he said, you keep telling me to like separate myself from the shards, but I find that difficult because I'm two.
Yeah.
And it's like, but I think you're a little misguided because you haven't touched this power, and I think you were wise to do so. And he starts going into the technicalities, and he's like, but I am kind of being nitpicky here. And then the exact quote being, in truth, it would be the combination of a vessel's craftiness and the power's intent that we should fear the most.
A passionate Taravangian.
Yeah. And it was so perfect. Just, it's a great way to hint to us without really tipping us off that things are about to change.
Yeah.
The status is not quo.
Well, and the thing, and dropping this right at the end of, like, right as we're getting close to the end of book 4 of a 5-book cycle. Like, the way story structure works, usually in the penultimate act of a story arc, that's when things get really bad. If we're looking at a 3-act play, it's act 1, act 1 you chase them up a tree, act 2 you throw rocks at them.
Yeah.
And or you set the tree on fire. It's just like things get really,
and then the eagles come and it's fine.
Yeah. It's the Empire Strikes Back, where things are bad. Things are very scary. And so we're hitting book 5 and it's about to go down.
Yeah. Well, and it's very interesting because, after what happened in Oathbringer, we all knew that the diagram was not long for this world because things had been exposed. And so they're waiting for the betrayal, and Odium no longer has use for Taravangian. And so Taravangian's over here. I mean, we have that emotional scene where Taravangian's sort of sending away all his friends.
Yeah, he's dismantling the diagram.
Yeah, like they're sending off people who they don't think will do as they're told off on pointless quests. He's telling everyone else, go and, be safe and all this other stuff. Like he's going off a man to the gallows. He's totally convinced he's going to die. And Taravangian is just so interesting because he worships himself, but not in a narcissistic way.
He worships a different version of himself.
Yeah. That this person that he considers a god. And it's interesting that the person he considers a god is the exact opposite of who actually became
That's the one he's
god.
the farthest from. Yeah.
But it was all the machinations that guy set up that made it possible.
Yeah, so there's that. A lot of people have been speculating, what does it mean? Like, how does his boon / curse affect him now that he has become a shard himself?
Yeah, I can see it like 4 different ways, basically.
Well, because the boon / curse was granted to him from another shard. Yeah. And so it's like, the whole concept of infinity plus 1 equals infinity, infinity plus infinity equals infinity. It's like they're both of an infinite nature.
Yeah. I'm going to guess that it technically is still there. It just doesn't matter anymore because it's overwhelmed by the rest of what he is now.
Yeah.
But I bet it's there.
The thing is, remember what his boon was, what he asked for? He asked for capacity.
Yep.
And that capacity has been filled. He was because the day that he had the intelligence, but he has the capacity for compassion at this point, and it's been filled by passion. So it'll be very interesting seeing what happens with Odium. like what that mixture is.
Well, and then there's the weirdness of Cultivation is the one who set this all up.
Yes.
So what's her
Cultivation
angle?
is terrifying.
Yeah, we don't have any idea if she underestimated him and gave him the boon, and then he's done this and she's going, oh no, or if she's like, yes, it's working in my it's working exactly as I planned. We don't know.
She seems, from what little we get at the end of the book, she seems completely like she expected this, because she walks up to him, which whatever that means in the spiritual realm.
How you wanna
And
be perceived, I guess.
he has that moment because he's like looking at all the possibilities for the first time. And he's just like, he's sort of in awe of how not set in stone things are, like how limited having omniscient power is. And he's just like looking at her as like, how on earth did you even dare to try something like this? Like it's just, he's giving her all the respect of bravo, this like master stroke. And she's like, it's, you can start to do, and then she's like, do you want me to show you?
No.
And so
Show him.
Honestly, I'm more, because of where Taravangian was, like in his phase, like
cycle?
cycle, or I was going to say cycle, but it's not really as predictable as a cycle. But where he was in his orbit, his spectrum, he was in the most compassionate spot. And so it's just sort of like, is he locked into that spot, or is he just sort of reverting back to Taravangian base? Or is like there's a just like, where is he? Who is he right now?
The way he's talking in those scenes, I got the impression it felt to me a lot closer to his normal version.
I think so.
Because you remember the day, like, but right before he did that, like he was like tasting bread and crying over how delicious it was. And the guy talking once he's got the power ain't crying over no bread.
It almost seems like he's both.
Yeah.
Like he is the smartest he could be, and he's the most compassionate. But I think because he was so compassionate, I think it could temper who he became at that moment. Like you were saying, his that like your prediction was that was going to be a big thing.
My prediction was he was going to do something amazing with his like, and I was thinking something with connection. And then when all of a sudden he looks down at Nightblood, I have the moment where I'm looking, I'm like, oh no, I was right in all the wrong ways. I didn't see this coming. I don't want to be right like this.
And oh gosh, it's just my every time I think about it, my brain just starts spinning because there's so much going on. But yeah, it's just trying to figure out though, who is Taravangian right now? How much of it is Taravangian, how much is Odium? Because like a lot of time, at the beginning they do retain a lot of themselves, and then over time it just gets overwhelmed by the intent of the shard. Chat.
Well, and so
Chat has an interesting question. Will Todium become compassion instead of passion? I don't think so.
I think he's hatred.
Yeah, because and Brandon has said
will be hatred.
Brandon has said that Race considered himself to be passion, but he really was hatred. Like that's just what Odium is.
Yeah, I remember this in Oathbringer when Dalinar's looking into the depths of Race's eyes, and he's he starts going through it. It's like he is these things, but he is hatred.
Yeah.
Like what I think it was Frost's letter where he said he's God's divine hatred,
untempered.
Untempered. And so it is all that passion, but it's overwhelmed.
But there is a tinge of spite, or not spite, but vice to it.
Yeah.
Well, and I mean, and we know that Race was the whole reason the Nightblood thing kind of worked was because Race was already wearing thin by the intent, just sort of molding him to its shape.
Well, and we've already seen it refers to 80 was a good man, and we've seen what happened with Ruin on Scadrial, and Race was crafty from the beginning.
Yeah. And
Mhm.
I don't know how crafty Race was, but compared to Taravangian and what he's been pulling,
Mhm.
I can't imagine he's more like he's got to be at least equal to Race.
Yeah, and I mean, and he's so much fresher
Mhm.
and not worn thin that I worry about his craftiness way more than I would about Race. I mean, Race has the time that he's spent doing all of this planning,
Right.
but Taravangian he's Taravangian, and he just schemes, and he's scary that way. And
Well,
yeah.
to your point, like everything we see from Hoyd and some of the letters, it seems to me Race is kind of a petty person. I get that impression
Mhm.
from Hoyd.
Okay.
It's clear Hoyd doesn't like Race personally.
Yes.
Mhm.
And never did.
Taravangian's not a petty person. He is
Mhm.
he is a practical person.
Mhm.
He's someone who takes utilitarianism to its furthest degree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's something in the diagram. I remember it's something to the effect of, look, like what do we have to be willing to sacrifice? Everything. Our entire existence is on the line here.
Mhm.
We can't be
Yeah.
willing to not sacrifice everything.
Yeah.
And which is the opposite of Journey,
It's like if we
before
lose,
destination.
we lose everything. So any sacrifice less than
Anything goes, yeah.
than everything, we're still out ahead.
Yeah.
And you just wonder with Taravangian, like suddenly, I mean, we see he's the first person we've ever seen to outsmart Hoyd.
I didn't like that scene. That scene was so
Mhm.
stressful.
And before
For me,
and before we
I
get
liked it narratively.
and before we
not-
get emails and stuff about, but did he actually outsmart Hoyd? Brandon has confirmed that he bamboozled
Yeah.
Hoyd.
Yeah.
So
or at least outplayed him.
yeah.
But the whole only reason he got to outplay him was because he wasn't Race.
Mhm.
And that's
Like-
what Hoyd was expecting, yeah.
Yeah. It was something not even Hoyd could have predicted. And it's what let him outplay him a little bit. And for me, it was kind of a necessary thing just because Hoyd had sort of just been, shown to be almost untouchable. And so narratively, I'm like, this is good to finally have him have something not go according to plan. Because the only other time something for him hadn't gone according to plan was something that happened off screen in Mistborn, where he tells Kelsier, you kind of ruined some things by destroying those pits.
Mhm.
But like, that's the only minor thing that's ever really not gone according to his plan as far as we could see. And so I think it was good narratively, but it's scary because suddenly, we see that this is now somebody who can even outsmart Hoyd on occasion.
Also, I need to backtrack. I said Hoyd never liked Odium. Apparently, according to a word of Brandon from a while back, Odium and Hoyd or Race were once friends. So I can't say never did, but it predates the shattering.
Mm. Okay.
And I don't know what's scarier, someone hating Hoyd or getting along with him.
You don't know?
No, but I find it interesting because he sent the diagram, scattered them to the corners of the wind. Or that's
Mhm.
not the phrase, but don't worry about it. Now that he's in this position, could he contact his old,
The diagram.
his old cronies and be like, and just be like, hey,
Well-
so,
Well,
saving the world's back on the menu, boys.
Chad just pointed out. Libralita says, "I'm also curious how Moash will interact with Odium because Moash joined Graves, who was a part of the diagram,
Yeah.
and Moash
Part of my
is a puppet of Odium as well. So
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, we haven't really seen how Todium has interacted with the Fuse and everything, right? We haven't seen.
no,
We know Elle is pretty psyched about this.
Okay, I was trying to remember. Yeah,
Yeah, well, because he writes his letter, where like he's testing out, because he tests out the void knife thing on the defeated one.
Oh, that's right.
And
Yeah.
which one? That's Taravangian all over, perfectly willing to sacrifice what he views as a broken piece.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To just
It's not useful
intel.
anymore. We'll just get rid of it. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, he's already proven he lost to half a radiant.
Well, and Odium has absolutely no ties to, there's no sentiment here.
Yeah.
There's no this is my failure. This is the old guys. This is the new CEO coming in and clearing the house.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and on top of it, Taravangian is not someone who really rests on tradition anyway. Like, he was perfectly willing to, ignore tradition to get things done,
or use tradition to manipulate himself into certain positions.
Oh, he's willing to do anything if he thinks it's for the quote unquote greater good, which is the scariest thing involved.
Yeah.
You should always be afraid of a guy who's selfish is far less scary than someone who thinks they're doing the right thing.
Yeah. No, I want to learn more about Corivelium Avast, aka Cultivation. Just because I want to know who she is. Because we know next to nothing about her.
Yeah, we know she's a dragon. We know she had a thing with honor. That's about all we know.
Yeah, we know that they were romantically paired, and she's a dragon.
Well, so let's examine that a little bit. Like, what could be some reasons she wants Taravangian to be Odium?
Because he's not race, is what I suspect a big part of it is.
Yeah,
that's a fair thing. Well,
because she cultivated three people. She cultivated Dalinar, she cultivated Lift, and she cultivated Taravangian.
I wonder if part of the appeal for Taravangian for her is that he can be so clinical in his thinking and purpose driven and not by emotion, whereas Odium is very emotion based, right? So I guess I wonder if she was hoping that he would temper it the way that she wanted by having someone who's more.
The scene we get the most from her is her scene with Dalinar in that one flashback where she gives Dalinar his boon.
Yeah, with the Night Watcher.
Yeah.
And she gives the whole speech of, I cultivate everything, even the thorns. Which is just awesome speech.
Poetry.
But there's part of me that wonders, because there's no reason to assume she's not is equally as dominated by her shard as anyone else is. And so, what is the intent of cultivation? Now, Race's version of saying cultivation, she just wants change for change's sake, which that's not cultivation. That's just random growth. Cultivation implies a certain amount of planning,
some direction. Yeah.
You're letting it grow, but
you're also pruning here and there, and you're making sure this is right, and you're and there's a lot.
You're guiding
more.
It.
Yeah.
I really like what Navani says when she's talking about the combination of honor and cultivation, which is the sibling, and the sibling's light. She calls it the song of science, where it's this guided process within rules. And so if you think of her with a little less of the rules, she's going to go more out of the bounds than honor would. And Odium was coming for her kid. So on one hand, I think there could be some, maternal instincts there of she knows he's coming for my kid. I'm gonna ruin this man. But I think even that, I think it's more, I wonder if there's a part of her that she knows how much she's ruled by her
shard.
And there's an event that happened, relatively recently for them, which is a new shard, came into being in Sazed. And I'm wondering if this is part of her, she saw that and said, you know what? Let's start pruning shards. Let's see if that does better for the universe, because the shards are becoming unwieldy.
Yeah.
And that whatever they did for a purpose.
Well, chat has mentioned that it says that there's a possibility that she's looking for new vessels for all 3 of the Roshar shards. Taravangian for Odium, Dalinar for Honor, and
Roshar shards can be used in a really good tongue twister.
And Lift for Cultivation, which it is, Brandon has confirmed, shards can willingly give up their power.
Did he say what happens to them afterwards? Do they die, or do
he says, as for what would happen, well, there are some variables in there, kind of like the variables in what happens to a bucket of water if you dump it out. Depends on where it falls, how strong the wind is, what the air is like, etc., etc.
So not a firm answer.
But here's the thing: it might be, difficult depending on. I mean, because we know that the Lord Ruler picked up the power of preservation and then let it go. So people who have held the power of a shard and let it go, those are slivers, I believe is what they're called.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And but I'm thinking, so maybe she doesn't want to be a shard anymore. Maybe she thinks she is too ruled by her by the shard, and she wants fresh people who aren't as ruled by the shards. And I don't know. Like I'm spitballing on this, but I feel like if anybody could step away and be okay, it's a dragon.
Yeah, I feel like she'd have the best chance for surviving dropping sharddom.
I mean, we don't know much about Shodel. I haven't read Brandon's, thesis of Dragonsteel. But so outside of that, we don't really know much about the Shodel. So who knows?
Yeah.
No, but it's interesting because the other thing is things have stagnated on Roshar.
Yep.
Because of what Honor did to bind Race to it. And what's interesting is if you look at the deal that Race formed with Dalinar, basically Dalinar fought for a stalemate. That no matter what, that it buys people more time.
Right.
I think part of what she's doing is she's trying to upset that she's wanting to get things to change to cultivate the universe, because conflict is one of the quickest ways to start getting things to progress.
A stalemate's not going to do that.
Yeah. But ironically, looking at the deal that they made, the only way for Odium to be able to get free of Roshar is a stalemate with the contest. Because he made it so that no matter what happened, like, he was going to sort of be trapped, at least for a while, on Roshar. Now, if he wins, he then gets Dalinar as his champion finally. And if you recall, that is something the diagram predicted. It predicted that Dalinar would fall and become Odium's champion. Now, it's like, oh, it didn't happen. But now suddenly that's back on the table.
Well,
but the diagram isn't infallible.
Right. Well,
it's gotten a lot of things wrong.
We know that Renarin is like he's a spanner in the works for the diagram because it doesn't see him.
Yeah.
Well, it's the same principle as 2 Mistborn using Atium. 2 people using Future Sight, it interferes with the other person's. But
it's not just Future Sight. It's Renarin.
Yeah.
Now, are you talking about more
Renarin
using his corrupted,
like the reason,
truth watcher?
Yeah, because that's what lets him see into the future, which what makes him a blind spot. But the difference is, Race didn't know that, because we get the scene where Odium comes to Taravangian, and Odium picks up the diagram, and he's like, "You did this without fortune. Wow. Okay, that's impressive. Let me show you what I see." And he like expands it out, and so he can see everything. And Taravangian's just sort of like, whoa, because it's also Taravangian on one of his slow days, and he's like looking around confused, and he has that realization where he suddenly realizes Odium was never going to deal with me on a day where I'm sharp. He's not going to do that. That makes no sense for him. But then he notices a black spot in what it is, and he sees a name, Renarin. So this version of Odium knows that Renarin is his blind spot.
Right.
So he may try and focus on taking out Renarin so that he eliminates that blind spot.
Or corrupting him to his side.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, could be.
Because that's the thing that Brandon's talked about. Originally, the diagram in like the first version was written by Renarin.
Oh,
Really?
Yeah, like
I don't
in
remember
the
that.
like,
in Prime.
Oh, the Prime one.
I think even before that.
Hmm.
It was.
I don't think Renarin
existed
existed before that.
There was Renarin Colin was the original person who did the diagram, which I think he's going to be using the corrupted Spren to do it then. Now I like this version way better. It's far more intriguing. But I could totally see Renarin, because remember, Renarin was being very kind to Taravangian right up till the end.
Yeah.
And so I think, as weird as it is to say, I think Taravangian has a soft spot for that kid.
Probably.
The same way Dalinar does.
No, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and so there's all sorts of very interesting dynamics. We know, like, suddenly, if Seth finds out that he made Taravangian a god,
he's gonna be so unhappy.
Oh yeah, well, because he didn't trust him. He was convinced that he was manipulating him again, and wouldn't believe anything he would say. And now he became a god. He's going to be quadruple convinced. He played me again.
Oh, yeah.
He tricked me into this. To which Taravangian would be like, well, yes, but no.
Not on
part
purpose.
of me, yes. Part of me, no.
A different me tricked you into this, but it was before we even met. Look, the point is,
I'm here now. It's great.
Yeah. Everything is on fire, and this is fine. I'm totally fine with the way this is unfolding.
It'll be interesting.
No, so I think she's gonna be totally hands off with Taravangian.
Corvellium is
Cultivation. Yeah. In the next book, and just be like, like, I put you here. Show me what you're gonna do.
Well, and I feel like, that's sort of part of how cultivation works. Is you do let it grow. You do let it behave. Like, yes, you guide it, but sometimes you just step back and say, okay, now it's hands off time.
Well, it's sort of the opposite of like my concerns for the shard I'm most afraid of, Mercy, because I'm imagining the helicopter parent god, and that sounds like the most terrifying thing of all. And this is sort of the opposite. This is like the healthy parent who teaches their kid to, become an individual. And now that also can go too far. Just like, I mean, that's the whole point of literally every shard, is that every virtue is a vice because it's not tempered by the other virtues.
Permissive parenting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I think it's the whole thing. She's gonna be like, nah, I'm gonna see how this plays out. And so but this is the thing. Of course she is. She set this up. This is all her plan.
Yeah.
Like, this is not a bug, it's a feature.
And again, we don't know anything about Corvellium Avast. So we just we can't speculate on what she wants to do because we have zero idea what her motivations are.
Yeah.
One thing we do know, though, is that Taravangian is the one who holds all the cards right now as far as knowledge goes, in a way that Race didn't.
Yeah.
Race had blind spots, but Taravangian knows these players intimately. Race thought he knew Dalinar.
Oh, yeah. But Race also thought Dalinar was going to turn, and he didn't.
So so did Taravangian.
Yeah.
And that was because that was the whole thing of if he's going to become the warlord, then we ally with him. If he sues for peace, gotta kill him. Because and the whole reasoning was because if he sues for peace, he's gonna become the tool of Odium. And so it was just this whole backwardsness. But he's had very intimate conversations with Dalinar, knows how he thinks. Like I'm wondering at what point that Dalinar is gonna find out that everything changed.
Yeah.
And I wonder if he's going to pass that on to Hoyd. Hoyd's going to go, wait, what? I got tricked?
Yep.
That'll be interesting to see if that scene does happen on screen.
Yep.
Or if Hoyd just doesn't find out.
Yeah. Well, and then there's the entire wild card of whatever L is.
Yeah.
Before we speculate on that, though, I think it's a good time for a break. So we'll be back in a bit.
Okay.
And we're back.
Bye-bye.
So, about that Taravangian guy.
He's scary.
Jordan, I think you were bringing up L, something
yes.
to do with L.
The fact that L was just so excited for him, like I forget the exact quote, but he's like talking, it's like, I've been waiting for you, my newest Odium or whatever. Like he's weirdly devout for someone who just barely became a god.
And maybe it's just a matter of I was sick of the old guy, so anybody new,
let alone anything he would have heard about. I feel like L seems to be informed enough that he probably would have heard about Taravangian pre-Odium-ing. So
well, and he admires humans. Like that's the weird part is
he really does.
And so
creepy.
He's perfectly comfortable with a human being his god.
Because he's not totally a human anymore. He's tweaked a little bit.
Well, I mean, and it's not like Race was,
Well, Race was human too.
Yeah.
So.
But he always would present himself, he always presents himself as if he's,
Whatever.
your race.
Yeah.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
And so
it's a smart thing to do.
It is like, don't show up looking like an alien. It does get you more worshipers.
Or your enemy or their enemy or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. But there's some really weird things going on. First of all, if L is, we still don't know what he replaces his carapace with.
Oh, that's right. Because he put something else on it.
There's the assumption that it's aluminum or silver or something that either negates or blocks investiture. And we know he had his rhythms taken from him.
Right.
Which is I think one of the reasons he might admire the humans so much is he's kind of the most human like of the singers for that reason. Because
he doesn't hear the rhythms.
He doesn't hear the rhythms.
Studies them. Yeah.
And so, but he is all on board and excited for Taravangian. And he's the thing I think with him is I have a feeling he might be showing up in the Kaladin and Seth storyline.
I just had an interesting thought. So finish your thought. I'll come
That's
in
kind
there.
of the end of the thought.
Remember, Odium was going around splintering shards and not taking up any of their power. Why?
Because he doesn't want to be untempered, or doesn't want to be tempered by the other.
He doesn't want to end up like Harmony.
Taravangian is touched by cultivation.
Oh.
Like he's already touched by cultivation.
I wonder if she's banking on being able to influence him because she has that little in.
And so it's just so in a sense, Taravangian, yes, is Odium in the way that Race was, except Taravangian is not pure Odium the way that Race was.
Yeah. In a small way, he's already failed if that's the goal.
Well, either that or it's not that he's already failed. Corvellium isn't necessarily just playing against race. She's playing against Odium.
Yeah.
And with that intent, he doesn't want to be tempered or affected or influenced by anything else. Taravangian, as he is influenced by something else.
There's also, and that's the question is that Odium that doesn't want to be tempered, or was it race that didn't want to be tempered,
or both?
Yeah,
or
the combo.
Like, because I can just, I mean, look, the line in the diagram, you have to become king of everything, which,
you have to rule everything. Yeah.
After this, it just like everything was a lot smaller a while ago.
It's getting big and complicated.
It's interesting. We keep talking about, like, because, Sazed mentions, you have to look at the vessel and the
intent,
shard, the intent. And we keep talking about them so separately. I'm really interested if there are any shards who actually somehow have a dialogue between the vessel and the shard.
If they actualized almost.
Like if there's exactly, like almost like, because for example, Brandon said if you leave a shard by itself, it will develop a consciousness. What if there's like, I'm thinking, what if like Whimsy, you have the vessel and the shard and there's actually a dialogue going?
I'm already scared of what shards can do if left alone. I mean, the one that actually like terrifies me the most is just not because of what they did, but because what it implies for the others is virtuosity, sacrificing itself in like this grand display of artistic, making something just truly magnificent. But, and it's like, okay, that's pretty insane that you're willing to go that far. And it just goes to show the lengths that these shards will go to have their intent be pure. And so you wonder how far Taravangian is going to be able to sort of take the reins of Odium, and how long he can control that, because that's the other thing that we don't talk as much about. Taravangian did have a temper, but he normally tempered it.
Yeah.
So you said virtuosity. What?
That's the one for Secret Project 3.
That's the name of the shard for Secret Project 3?
And
when was that announced?
For Secret Project 3. It's in the part that we read. We know that virtuosity sacrificed itself.
That's right. Okay.
Oh,
I vaguely remember.
It's been too long since I've read the snippet, and I've forgotten a lot.
And they just haven't updated the Coppermind to reflect that because
it's a secret project.
It's not out yet.
Yeah.
But
it's just one of these things where, like, he had a temper on him, and the part that's kind of scary was he was getting pretty dang frustrated with Dalinar. Like, and just because Dalinar was so convinced he's right, and he's just like, no, you're an idiot. Because Taravangian's a very, thoughtful man. And he's thought these things through, and he just came to the very different conclusion. And I think there's going to be the part of Odium that's in him now, I think might make him a little more petty than he normally would be. And I'm scared that it's going to get very personal because he wants to prove Dalinar wrong.
I mean, we haven't seen too many shards that still have people they knew when they were mortal still around.
I mean, the only other one we've seen is Sazed
and Kelsier. And I mean, even then, Kelsier's not really mortal the same way either. And so
they are frustrated with each other, but that's a different situation.
Yeah, and Sazed is far less scary to me than Taravangian is. And so it's kind of interesting, like you were saying, to see how much of that might come out in Odium. You know, like you made me frustrated, so I'm going to take it out on you now that I have all of this power. But I don't know that he would, but I am curious about that.
I think he'd be tempted.
It's also interesting just because the deal that Dalinar made was with race.
Yeah, and that was the other thing, is do we know for sure if the deal is still 100% valid? Is Odium held to it still, since Odium changed?
I'm trying to remember the line, but I feel like Taravangian. We have a moment where Taravangian like looks at that deal and he's like, "How did Race let himself get maneuvered this poorly? Like, you had all the cards." And so I think it implies that he's still bound by it.
Okay. I couldn't remember.
The deal wasn't with Race, the deal was with Odium.
And so since he's Odium, the deal is now his. Okay. See, I wasn't sure if that was still...
It's worth speculating because Brandon plays with that kind of stuff.
If it isn't valid, it's going to be terrible if Dalinar comes up with, okay, here's the deal, we're ready to fit inside the box, and Odium's like, oh, I'm not held to that. So I don't know. But
I think he is, and I think it's what the line that sticks out to me was Race speaking to Dalinar and saying, like, I'm not basically saying something to the effect, I'm not going to rules lawyer you. I will honor the spirit of what you're doing. And he, even with Taravangian, the deal he made with Taravangian, he was like, you're not going to trick me into, you get to rule everything, so I can't destroy, everything. It's like, we're going to do this. I will give you 2 generations. And just being, he's like, it's strange for a guy who's the embodiment of hatred
to be that honorable.
He's not unfair. But partially because of the rules of being a shard, that you get bound by these things.
Yeah.
And what was the line? There was something to the effect of like, if I broke it, it would open me up to Cultivation being able to do stuff against me.
Yeah.
Right.
Like, and so I think he would break it easily if he were alone, but he's not.
There was another point that I was making when I brought up, though, about the deal being between Dalinar making the deal with Race rather than Taravangian. The difference, Taravangian admires Dalinar. Like he wanted his friendship. He sought it. He like, when Dalinar spoke to him as a friend, he appreciated it.
Yeah, well, because it's so rare that he gets to speak with someone as an equal.
Yeah.
But he sees Dalinar and recognizes that Dalinar is a good man.
Which are hard to come by. Yeah.
But at the same
Race,
time,
but the thing is, Race was a bit more jaded.
Yeah.
Race seemed to be more of the mindset of a good man is a weak man.
Yeah.
But Taravangian kind of agrees with that, because when they get their philosophical discussions, he's like, that's wishy-washy. That's, he won't actually, being a king is to make the very difficult decisions.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is, Race looked down on Dalinar for it. Race looked at Dalinar and said, "This is a fool." While Taravangian looks at him and says, "This is an idealist."
Yeah.
Yeah. Which I think he still feels is a fool, but it's a fool that he wishes could be true.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Race is just like,
too pragmatic.
You're a fool. Exactly. Race was just more along the lines of, you're a fool, you're going to get swept away, and Taravangian is, you're a fool, I wish you weren't. I wish that what you believed in wasn't a foolish thing to believe in.
Well, and part of me makes me very scared for Dalinar, because I think Race was very was like a jilted lover that Dalinar rejected him because he had molded Dalinar personally to become his champion. And so when Dalinar rejected him, it was a very huge personal failing.
It's stung.
I think Taravangian was like, I have a chance to make him my champion. Like,
that's the thing,
my
is
best friend that I get to hang out with for all time and eternity and show him the error of his ways, but we're going to do great things together.
Yeah, and
that's way more terrifying.
Yeah, because again, Dalinar rejected both of them.
Yeah.
You know, when he found out what Taravangian had done, he rejected him as well. He felt betrayed and pushed him away. And Taravangian's response was mourning.
Yeah.
He mourned the respect that Dalinar had for him.
Yeah. Well, because he knew that he then had to ruin him. And that's when they, like the council and like all the truth bombs were getting dropped all at the same time.
But what I'm saying is that Taravangian valued Dalinar as a person, while Race saw Dalinar as a tool to be used and discarded.
You know, it actually reminds me of the line of Hoyd. I would gladly burn this world if it got my goals. I would cry.
That's Taravangian.
Yeah.
With tears, yes, but I would do it. I would let it happen.
That's interesting. It sort of puts, I've talked about how Kelsier and Hoyd deserve each other because they're so similar. This is sort of like Hoyd is sort of the weird middle ground between Kelsier and Taravangian. Because all three of them are pragmatist type people, but they're different styles of pragmatist.
Yeah.
Well, they're all very, very single-minded. They have a goal, and they are going to achieve that goal.
That was in doing research for this episode. Someone asked him, "Is there anything about the ghost bloods in the diagram?" And Brandon said, "Yes," with no clarification.
Of course, there is.
Yeah.
So
they're active on Roshar. Of course, there's something about them in the diagram.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Just one of those things.
There's still a part of me that hopes that the Cold War that happens in Mistborn Era 3 is with Roshar.
Yeah. Well, it's the thing. It looks like they're sort of starting to pick apart the corpse of autonomy. Like autonomy is someone who did an early game rush, but now doesn't have the tech to survive the late game, and so everyone's starting to pick them apart.
I don't know about that.
I want it to be though, because I want more StarCraft references.
What?
It's a horrible way to write a book.
It's a great way to write a book. But no, the other thing that's interesting, just going through with the whole Dalinar Taravangian relationship, is the fact that he's going to. I wonder how long he's going to wait to reveal this, because there could be a huge advantage to revealing it early, trying to throw Dalinar off his game, or even get Dalinar maybe to just look. Come on, it's me. What's the worst that could happen? It's like you became literal hatred, and it's like, oh, why are we being so judgy?
Yeah, it'll be fine. You know me.
Come on. Just release a god. It'll be great.
We'll do great things.
But I could also see him trying to hold it back as long as he can to keep that little nugget in reserve. And I'm wondering which way he'll play it.
I feel like he's going to hold it back.
I honestly don't know, because either could potentially be a powerful move.
Holding it back would be more in line with how he played things in
the diagram.
Oathbringer. Yeah. Because that was the whole thing. They knew about not the recreants. Dang it, suddenly when they
Aharietium?
Yeah, when they put down all their shard blades.
Aharietium.
Yeah. They knew the reason for it a long time ago. And they held that knowledge back
until it would do the most damage. Yeah.
And so that would be in line with how they played it. But this is also the him as the god of passion. And I could see him as a, the shard of passion just being like, no, let's go for the emotional play. Dalinar's an idealistic sap. Let's go for it.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, he definitely he did held it back from Hoyd.
Oh yeah. Well, he's the person you should hold back as much from. Him and Kelsier. Don't give them any knowledge that they.
Which is funny because Hoyd is all about let's keep secrets, and Kelsier is like free knowledge for everyone.
Yep. But as long as he thinks it's a good idea, because he's also holding some stuff back too. And Marasi calls him out on it.
Well, no, he likes his own secrets. He just doesn't want anyone else to have
general
them.
secrets should be out there, but not his.
Yeah.
Well,
it is, obviously getting sidetracked here. I do get the whole thing of, it's like, yeah, Sazed hasn't been quite himself lately. I don't want to give him all that because I don't know if I can trust him with it, which it's got to kill Kelsier because Sazed was the person he trusted the most.
Yep.
But no, but Kelsier, he totally withholds secrets. Like all of them do. Because again, they're pragmatists. So they're not going to give things up unnecessarily.
I mean, the Ghostbloods trade in information.
Yeah. Well, that's the other thing that is a shoe that we're waiting to drop is whatever's going on with the Ghostbloods next book, because Shallan declared open war on them.
Yeah.
And I could totally see Taravangian just being like, okay, these guys are here. How do I play this?
Yeah.
Well, and with the Ghostbloods, we do have from the Lost Metal an indication that Roshar between books 5 and 6 is kind of cut off from the rest of the Cosmere to a degree, and that Ayatil is
amok.
She's gone rogue.
Yeah, if I remember from Twin Souls thing, he says something about like I think amok might have been the word he used. Like just making
like she's running amok on Roshar.
Yeah, just this whole idea that they don't have the control they used to have, which makes it sound like, because everyone's been like looking at what the Ghostbloods are doing on Roshar, been like, what the crap, Kelsier? What the crap? What the literal crap? But with that little tidbit, you're like, I don't think they have as much control as Kelsier would like to imply he has, because implying you have a certain level of control is a little bit of power you can do.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Taravangian, because he's such a pragmatist, he literally could play things any way he wants to. That's the whole thing about honor. Is honor, you suddenly say there are things I will not do. And that's the problem with fighting a pragmatist is a pure pragmatist will say, oh, that's dumb.
If it serves me, I'm going to do it.
Yeah. Like, I'll look at the cost. I'm not a monster. I'm not going to just go around kicking puppies for no reason. But if kicking the puppy gets me what I want, sorry, puppy, you're in the way.
Yeah.
Especially now that he's going to be a god. It's like he doesn't even have sort of that. He's got this level of sort of moral authority now that he believes he could have. Because I mean, he now has future sight. Like, look at how good he was doing without it.
Yeah, it's scary.
Yeah. It'll be very interesting to get, like, book 5 is going to be, we know it's going to be a game changer because it wraps up arc 1. How the heck do you wrap up an arc?
Okay.
Like this?
I was just trying to think of, like, what could Dalinar's play be? Because the whole idea is, like, for Taravangian, the best thing that can happen is some sort of stalemate, because then he's sort of released from the entire agreement. He's got to get Dalinar to break his word. there's part of me that almost wonders if
That's
and
what. Yeah.
this is this is out there. What Dalinar's got the ability to bind.
Mm-hmm.
What if Dalinar, like in a desperate play, says, "Okay, the thing that makes Odium so scary is that he's untempered." And instead of releasing him from Honor's bond,
he binds him.
to it and makes him like
War.
suddenly tempers him with it, and he becomes war itself.
Ooh.
Because suddenly that is throwing a wrench into Odium's entire plan,
Mm-hmm.
because that's the whole idea of war, is that it's the hatred but bound by rules.
Yeah.
And then ends up starting a Cold War with Scadrial.
Yeah, like it would play into that. And it would also explain why everything suddenly gets cut off, because suddenly it'd be a form of Taravangian that has to plan, has to start marshaling his forces.
Which, I mean, he likes to plan anyway.
Yeah. Well, and on top of it, that actually would kind of be the ultimate slap at Taravangian, because suddenly Taravangian would have to play by rules.
You say marshaling his forces. Do you mean cultivating an army?
Could be.
That I wasn't saying that as a joke. I was saying that as
the joke just played in there too, though. Well, it was nice.
That totally leans right into what we discussed about with cultivation. Cultivation, the best way to start like creating progress is conflict. Necessity is the mother of innovation.
Wars especially, yeah.
Well, and again, Odium's plan was basically kind of to take Roshar and use Roshar as his force.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Huh. Well, and you know what? I could totally see Dalinar in that situation being like, I'll serve you, like as this.
I'll work with Taravangian. Yeah.
I'll work with war. I can work with war.
Remember, the Dalinar's book was going to be called High Prince of War.
Yeah.
Oh.
I don't
totally
think
different meaning.
I don't think this will be what happens, but I want to keep that in my back pocket as a possibility. That somehow Dalinar binds him to honor.
I think our predictions episode, I'm going to get totally everything wrong for book 5.
Jordan's like, I'll make the aluminum foil hat. I'm not going to wear it yet.
Not just yet.
I'm going to make it.
So to answer chat, like, do you think Dalinar would be willing to conquer the Cosmere? I don't think Dalinar would view it as conquering the Cosmere. I think he'd view it more as trying to steer this war machine into trying to make it more honor than odium. I think that's like how he would justify it. But look, Dalinar isn't unfamiliar with having to do horrible things.
Yeah.
For good reasons. And then it also could explain then going forward, these future books, like you could actually send some of these people off to go do war things, but you still have plot lines back at home. I mean, that would suddenly create an entire plot line of how do we get Dad out of this?
Oh, man.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just It's just something that just kind of came to me. Just the idea of the other possibility there is a combined shard. He doesn't like. How would you fight? Like the concern that Odium has, because Dalinar said Odium is kind of terrified of Sazed. It like what he symbolizes, and so. Suddenly, this would be a much more effective shard, because those two intents aren't at odds with one another the way that preservation and ruin are.
You don't have to spend all of your effort just to keep from collapsing.
And so Because like that's part of the scary thing that with Sazed is he might have to give in to the idea of Discord just to get things done.
Yeah.
And that's scary. But war wouldn't have to.
No, there's so much to talk about on this. We may need to revisit this in another episode at some point. We've got a bunch of stuff already planned out, but this is
We can be
definitely something.
flexible. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, who knows? Brandon will drop some words of Brandon at some point where it's like, all right, back at it again.
Oh man.
Well, are y'all up for speculating on something else? Because we do actually have an email this week with a bunch of speculation.
I can try.
Stuff.
Don't know how well I'll do, but we can try.
All right. So this email comes from, I have no idea how to pronounce this. Miesco M. And I thought it was a few interesting things that they posited. He says, do you think that Ferucamus could compound using liquid investiture? Also, could you use hemalurgy on Thrinity ghosts or shades? And what are the limits of pewter compounding before you die of overstrain? And finally, what would happen if you hemalurged, and I like that word, I think I'm going to use it in the future, a spren? Only asking for opinions. I'm not expecting proof of anything. Thanks for seeing this. Love the pod. Sincerely, a Kelsier and Kaladin fanboy.
So when he says hemalurge a spren,
so I think it's like, can you use a spike to grant a spren abilities? That's how, either that or can you use a spike
to take the abilities from a spren? Can you make a spike from spren? That's the other way.
You can use a hemalurgic spike to steal a nail bond, but it's not really worth it because the spren could just say, okay, I'm done.
Yeah.
And then the bond is just gone.
Yeah.
So spren are cognitive shadows.
Mm-hmm.
We've already seen someone who is a cognitive shadow trying to get powers in Kelsier, and we know that he doesn't have that. That they had to use his one hemalurgic spike was able to staple him to a body, but that's it.
Right. So it hasn't granted powers. Well, and part of the question is, does he only use that one spike because he doesn't trust Sazed? Because with two, Sazed can take control.
That's true.
Yeah, I have a feeling it's probably more due to they can't figure out how to make it work.
It's possible, but I feel like there's
I can see that being a factor. Yeah,
because to get the full spread of powers that he had, he'd have to go full Marsh.
Yeah, and I don't think he wants to do that.
And he's definitely not going to do that. But even to get one other, like I can totally see him, saying, "I want steel," because that was his
specialty,
bread and butter.
Yeah.
Yeah, but back to his question about a spren, I get the impression it's from Kelsier's perspective. It's because they haven't figured out a way to really do it. That said, Ishar is doing some very dubious experiments with spren right now, and there's part of me that's wondering because Ishar is also a cognitive shadow that's stapled to a body. If the reason for those things is sort of a similar in nature, trying to figure out how to use his powers as an oathbinder to forge connections that you're not supposed to be able to.
We also don't know how the heralds getting their bodies works.
Yeah.
Because they get spun out and he's like, do they inhabit
somebody
people?
Else? Do they just
pre-existing people? Or
Yeah, well, and heavens knows we don't know what's going on with his spren experiments either. We just got down there, and it's just like, what island of Dr. Moreau crap is
horror
this?
Show right here, yeah.
And so, I'm willing. Like, I don't think you can, but I have a feeling that whatever Ishar is up to is actually going to be remarkably similar to that question. What were the other ones?
Limits of pewter compounding. Can you use hemalurgy on ghosts?
You can only
get
so swole.
Well, and it's not just Yeah. Before you die of overstrain. Well, we know like the pewter dragging that
You get super.
that Vim was doing. Like, yes, she had strength, but it
She was
also
tired.
kind of destroyed her for a little while.
Yeah.
Because
I just think it's-
muscles can only take so much tension and whatever else before
Mhm.
they will snap. And so I think
Yeah.
there is, I don't know what that stopping point is, but there's going to be a point where your body's going to go, no, I cannot do anymore.
Well, and it's also just physically, like, you keep expanding, you get to a certain point where you don't have any range of motion. You
Yeah.
suddenly turn into the Michelin Man.
You just have like neck muscles to here.
It's the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man.
Yeah. And so I just think there's sort of a limit there. Now, I think speed is the one. It's like, how far can you go before do you start tearing your body apart due to friction?
Uh-huh. And I think there is a point. I think Brandon's even addressed that there is a point that your body would just disintegrate.
Yeah.
Then
Hemalurgy
what
on
was
shades, and then the liquid investiture in Ferucamus.
So I'm trying to remember, how did when they were in Oathbringer, when they were in the room with Asudan, there was a Sprin that was killed there, wasn't there? I'm blanking on the scene. I just remember.
Yeah, I think they did use a little dagger,
Asudan?
and they killed a little one in the corner.
I don't
Or
think
wait,
that,
or was that-
that was Rhythm of War, because that's what Moash did to Tefspren.
That's what.
Yeah.
I think I'm mixed
With Acidon.
No,
it was Spren torturing Gavinor.
Yeah,
Gavinor. Okay.
but no, the
He did. He had Syl.
Yeah, and Kelsier, I think, killed it with the Silblade.
Yeah, Cal did, and Syl was like, I didn't like doing that. That was uncomfortable.
Yeah. She was like, it was clearly this was wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you can do something to them. I mean,
so like with hemalurgy, the spike is invested, so who knows. But again, since we've seen Kelsier has stapled his body to a
spike
to his, or stapled a body to his cognitive shadow, I would suspect something similar to a degree could happen with the shade. I don't know how.
I mean, we know on Threnody, Silver, like there's a spark that goes on when it attacks those shades, and so I imagine
and we also know that
do something similar.
We also know that there is a degree of cognizance that can stick around because her Silence's grandmother's shade. It's clear that there's something different going on.
Yeah.
But we don't know specifics enough on that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's clearly
I think it would be possible to somehow, not based on enough of what we know yet, but I think that there is merit to it actually happening somehow.
Yeah, and then what was the fourth one?
What would happen if you hemalurged a Spren?
No, it was the Ferucamus could compound using liquid
touched.
investiture.
Oh, liquid. Yeah. Could they compound using liquid investiture? So the difference with compounding, because Ferucami, you are storing a very specific trait that is keyed. Now one of the things that they can store is investiture. So I think that they could take that and then store the investiture itself.
They can totally compound with liquid investiture, because what you do is you just store whatever your trait is, and then you use the liquid investiture to just burn your power.
So they store it directly into liquid investiture, I guess.
No, I think you just store it in your metal as regular, and then you use the liquid investiture for the compounding.
But no, actually using liquid investiture, because remember, Hoyd stored some of his memories like a copper mine in breaths.
Yeah. But whatever Hoyd is doing is just on a different level.
It's a whole
right, but I mean, in concept, that's what he's doing, is he's treating pure investiture as a metal mine.
I question that, not because I don't think you're wrong. I actually think you're correct. But we got to remember there's something weird going on with breaths and memory, because we see Vasher give some command to some. It was like a little girl who like saw something, and he somehow took the memory of that horrible thing away
I do
with
not
a
remember that.
command.
I don't recall that.
It's a very minor and very mysterious part where it's sort of, you know, showing this guy knows a
What he's
lot
doing.
more about breath than
Uh-huh.
and so
Than your average.
there's some trick that's going on there. And so I don't know if I don't know if it's he stores it directly into the breath the way we would a mind, but whatever it is, I bet it's incredibly similar using those principles.
Yeah.
And it might be so similar that
Mm-hmm.
it's some moot point. Like, what is the difference? I don't remember if Hoy did it to a kid.
He makes
No, Hoyt just made the straw doll.
the little straw doll dance and then got the kid to come out.
Take care of her. Like guard her. And
Well,
then
no, and he gets her to the
he
people.
uses the same words in command to the person who adopts the child. But that's more poetic, I think, than mystical. Although there may be a mystic aspect to it.
We just don't know.
I mean, he could be burning brass at the time, and
and we don't know.
Or not brass, bronze. No, not bronze. My goodness, I'm doing great.
Zinc. You zinc tongue raven.
Yep.
All right. Well, interesting speculation. So thanks for sending that in. Again, I'm sorry for butchering your name, Miesco. We do for our other listeners, we love hearing from you. So please keep sending in questions. You can ask us about the Cosmere. You can drop us your ideas for topics that you would like us to discuss in a future episode of the show. And while you're at it, we'd love to hear your feedback about how you think we're doing. We crave validation, as well as any interesting theories you might have about what's going on in the Cosmere. You can send all questions and suggestions in a brief, concise email to cosmerestudies@gmail.com, and we could read it as part of the show. You can also contact us at the Sandersonian Institute of Cosmere Studies, P.O. Box 970063, Orem, Utah 84097. We do have our own personal projects outside of the podcast. So, Jordan, why don't you start us off and let us know what you're up to?
You can always find me at youtube.com/splicestream, but I'm always doing some Amiibo-based content, and to that end, I got something that was pretty cool here. One of my viewers, who's a longtime friend named Maddie, she went to the new Nintendo park that they have, and she got one of the I forget what they're called, the power-up bands. She got one of Daisy, which actually doubles as an amiibo. She got that.
That's pretty cool.
Me. We're going to be using it at some point for like a trophy or something for one of our tournaments or something. So I don't know if you're interested in that. Come check us out.
That's really cool.
I know, right? It was just one of those. Not many people got it because up until a couple months ago, or a month ago, you could only get these in the Japan park.
Cool. Well, Amy, how about you?
My Facebook is Coincidence Cosplay and Props. My Twitter is @CoincidenceCosp because my name is too long. My Instagram is @coincidence_cosplay, and my TikTok is @coincidencecosplay, all one giant word. My website is www.coincidencecosplay.com, and I need to update that still, as always. I am going to be trying to post my backlog of things for the year. I haven't made much progress on that yet, but I have started putting up non-Star Wars TikTok videos because it is now outside of May, which is the Star Wars month. So I put up another non-school one that I filmed a while ago, and I'm going to try and do some more batch filming, which is the way to do it apparently on TikTok, especially if you're doing a costume, is you get dressed up in that costume and you film like a whole bunch of videos, and then you put them in drafts, and then you put them out here and there later. So I'm going to be trying to do that now that my children are out of school, and hopefully when they're staring at the computers playing Portal 2 or whatever else, then I can film TikToks. So that's me.
That is you.
All right. And as for myself, I have another podcast with my friend Dylan. We talk about board games, and it is called The Innkeeper's Table. Just so you'll know, we actually did just recently go through a format change. We are moving from every week to every other week. And while we do plan to continue our Spiel des Jahres or Game of the Year spotlight episodes, those are actually going to be paused for a little bit. So a few of the SDJ winners only came out in Europe because that's actually what they're based on is European releases in Germany specifically. So we're working on figuring out how to play some of those because there are a few we've even been able to get a hold of, but they're all in German, which I do not read. So, but hopefully there are a few alternatives that we're working on, and once we get that figured out, we'll bring those back. So our most recent episode, though, we did a game spotlight on a social deduction game called The Resistance, which it's been around for a while now, but it's really got some interesting mechanics to it that improve on older social deduction games like Werewolf and Mafia and all that stuff. So definitely go check that out. The next episode that we do after that is going to be a top 3. We haven't decided on the topic just yet, but our top 3s, those are always a lot of fun because Dylan and I don't tell each other what they're going to be, and so we always get to react to each other's. So it's a lot of fun. For our listeners who want to support the Sandersonian Institute of Cosmere Studies, but you cannot become a patron for whatever reason, we'd love it if you just let your friends know about the show. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast, to like and subscribe over on youtube.com/Cosmere Studies. And if you want to toss us a good review wherever you listen to us, we would love it. You can also head over to store.streamelements.com/Cosmere Studies and buy merch. So final thoughts.
Taravangian is still scary, but a little less scary in some ways and a little more scary in other ways. So
I now kind of want to see my war idea happen. I don't know. I'm not ready to put the tinfoil hat on, as you said, but I really like the idea now that I'm thinking about it.
It's sitting at your desk looking pretty and you like it.
Yeah, why shouldn't I have it?
I was going to say it's calling you, telling you to put it on. One tinfoil hat to rule them all. No, I'm thinking, Corvelia Mavast has been playing the long game, and I think she's got an even deeper game coming on. And I'm looking forward to seeing what this has, not just for Roshar, but for the Cosmere as a whole, because this is a big switch. We've only had one other time where somebody who's not the original shard vessel picks up a shard. I mean, okay, it happened several times in quick succession at the end of Mistborn.
Since the original 16.
But since that, exactly.
Yeah. Very few times.
So, yeah, it'll be very interesting to see how that works out. I also think it's funny because the 17th shard is technically the 16th shard now.
True.
Because Harmony is one shard. In addition to the live episodes of the show that stream on twitch.tv/Innkeeper's Table every 2 weeks on Monday nights at 7:30 p.m. Pacific Time, 10:30 p.m. Eastern, listeners can find our videos on YouTube or audio versions of the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and just about any other service that carries podcasts by searching for Cosmere Studies. You can also follow us on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook under the profile at Cosmere Studies. For our next episode, we're going to be trying something a little different. We're going to be taking a look at the cover art from several of Brandon's books and ranking them using the classic tier system. We'll definitely try to be descriptive for our audio-only listeners, but this might be an episode where you really want to check out the video version. Or even better, join us for the live discussion in 2 weeks on Monday, June 19th, 2023 at 7:30 p.m. Pacific Time, 10:30 p.m. Eastern at www.twitch.tv/Innkeeper's Table. You might even be able to, affect the rankings if you check that out. Until then, on behalf of Amy, Jordan, and myself, thanks for listening, and remember, there's always another secret.